Need your football fix?
They ain't reviewing that.
In the Herd.
I don't think there was anybody in that locker room that questioned whether we were going to come out on top.
The Football Fix is brought to you by Campbell's Chunky Soup. Hearty, delicious, nutritious. I'm Doug Gottlieb. You're in the Herd on ESPN Radio and ESPNU. Pleased to be joined in studio by the newest member of the Saints Wall of Fame. Ring of Honor, excuse me. Ring of Fame, Ring of Honor?
Wall of Fame.
Wall of Fame. I had it right. Fish screwed it up, told me in my ear. Thanks, Fish. Appreciate that. No, thank you. I'm throwing you under the bus for that one. You can also hear him covering the San Diego Chargers. My Lightning Bolts back in first place where they belong in the AFC West. Got a lot to get to with six-time Pro Bowler Leroy Glover, who joins us in studio in the Herd on ESPN Radio. Congrats on the honor.
Thank you very much.
Congrats on getting the game ball from Sean Payton. If Bill Belichick was coaching the Saints, he would have scored like 50 or 60.
Right.
They could have done whatever they wanted with the Pats. Is it the Pats defense or the Saints offense? What caused such a blowout?
I think it's the Saints offense. I mean, if you were to be there at the game and you saw some of the throws that Drew Brees was making, I mean, it was phenomenal. The knock on him has always been his arm strength. I can't tell.
I'm a Charger fan, okay?
Sure.
Did they put a bionic shoulder in
Right.
when he busted up his arm?
Right.
Because he used to not have the arm strength, and now he makes every throw on the. I mean, he's not Joe Flacco in terms of making every throw, but seemingly he does. He has the arm strength for every throw.
Absolutely. Just fitting the ball into places where the average quarterback wouldn't have a chance of completing that pass, or it would be an interception or six to the house. And so Drew Brees was really the guy who won that game for the New Orleans Saints.
The place was jumping.
Oh, my God.
The noise seemed to have an effect on it. They may well have, based on schedule, especially if they could win this weekend in Washington, home field advantage throughout. But the defense, they had their top three cover corners were hurt, and they replaced them with McKenzie and McAllister. They just bring guys in off the street, and Greg Williams has the scheme that seems to be working. Are you buying into that defense, especially now they got Seth Ellis back healthy on the defensive front?
I absolutely am. I think the biggest addition was what you just said lastly there, bringing back Cedric Ellis to provide, they struggled against the run all season long. They've really struggled at times versus the run. Having Cedric Ellis back in the middle of the defense definitely helps. Mike McKenzie came in with about 3 days of practice, played a great game, played a phenomenal game in my opinion. Chris McAllister played his butt off as well, and then Darren Sharper's been doing it all year, got another interception.
Unreal.
Leading the league again in interceptions. I mean, for a 13-year veteran at the position, he's really laying the wood in the running game as well, and so really controlling the field from a free safety position.
You also got Scott Fajita back, which helps him against the run as well. Leroy Glover, six-time Pro Bowler, former Saint, joining us in studio. It's the Herd on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com. I guess my question is, you look at the Vikings, and I know they have a loss, and I know they've probably played a softer schedule, but they have at least one running back, maybe not as good of depth of running backs in the different varieties that, when healthy, the Saints have, but one running back who's better than probably everybody in football, maybe Chris Johnson aside. And Jared Allen's unbelievable coming off the edge. The defensive line is nasty stopping the run. And I don't know what you think of Favre at 40 years old, but he seems to be playing more like Favre before he hurt his arm last year and dominating the league. How do you rate Vikings versus Saints?
Where I see the biggest matchup here is the Vikings secondary versus the receivers and Drew Brees. I think that's where you have to give the advantage to the Saints in that situation. Drew Brees is just like Brett Favre in this situation. They don't get sacked a lot. They don't get touched a lot. As long as they can get the ball out of their hands, I think, it's obvious the Vikings have the better front four, but it's going to be tough for them to get to him if he's continuously getting the ball out of his hand in those quick three-step drops.
I saw that shot. I think it's going to be a memorable shot of Belichick and Brady, and they're both looking up at the scoreboard together and having some kind of mumbly conversation like, can you believe this? And, boy, this got out of hand quick. And I was thinking about all the guys that are gone. Thomas Dimitrov's now running the Falcons. Pioli's running the Kansas City Chiefs. They've lost all these assistant coaches, coaching in Denver and in Cleveland and, formerly at Notre Dame. And you look at the total turnover of that defense and sending Seymour to Oakland. Did you get the sense that maybe they're done watching Monday night, that maybe this is just a year in which you pack it in because they can't run it because the defense is so new?
I don't believe that. I think they still have a shot. I think they're still going to be the top team in the AFC West. They still have Tom Brady, Randy Moss, Wes Welker. They have a young secondary. They did get scorched on Monday night, but I do like their young secondary. Mike Merriweather is going to be a good player in my opinion.
You're buying into that. In 6 weeks, you still don't want to play Brady in the playoffs.
You still don't want to see him in the playoffs because they can put together a game plan like no other.
You cover the Bolts. They don't have Jamal Williams. I can't get the Pittsburgh game out of my head. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin the Herd on ESPN Radio. Leroy Glover, my guest in studio. I can't get because the Pittsburgh game, Norv comes in. We want to show him that West Coast football is tough and fire and brimstone, something he never gives. And Pittsburgh just lined him up and knocked him out. And look, I was impressed by the Giants win. Rivers has been playing phenomenal football. But, in order to get to the Super Bowl, think about the teams they're going to have to go through. Pittsburgh might well be one of them. Are you buying that somehow now the Chargers have turned that corner and that they are, in fact, good enough to be as good as we think some of their talent can be?
I'm not quite yet. I think if they run across a situation where they're behind in the fourth quarter, I think they have the offense that can come back, but I don't think they have the type of defense that can consistently, in the fourth quarter in the 4-minute drill, stop the run. They're doing it with a sort of a hodgepodge of nose guards there. They're injured. The injury to Eric Whittle hurts them at safety.
Yeah.
And then you don't know what you're going to get yet from Sean Merriman. He's still nursing a foot injury. And so that's the one weakness I see in the San Diego Chargers right now is their run defense.
Which is interesting because, they could run into the Colts that don't run it all that well, the Pats that don't run it seemingly at all. Maybe they just want to avoid, the Steelers and the Bengals. The Bengals that just run it over everybody, over 200 yards on the ground last week. Hey, Leroy, welcome. Enjoy running the entire gamut. The car wash has
begun,
as we call it, and enjoy the storm tonight. Nothing says New England like a little nor'easter. Thanks for joining us on ESPN Radio.
Thank you for having me.
The great Leroy Glover, who is on the Wall of Fame with the New Orleans Saints. No thanks to Fish, who had him on the Hall of Fame, and I believe had a bust carved out for him in Canton. Who's really to blame for Pacquiao Mayweather in Vegas or in Dallas? I'll tell you next. I'm Doug Gottlieb in the Herd on ESPN Radio.